Here we are with Stepwgn Part 2. We have sourced the remaining bits and hopefully everything will fit and we can get it properly finished. It's a bit windy and I've got a better microphone set up, so hopefully you can actually hear rather than being incredibly muffled. I'm probably going to whack into the mic continuously, as we're changing the anti-roll bar links on the front. You always want to jack up both sides of the vehicle, because obviously the anti-roll bar is designed to stop the vehicle body rolling. So if you move, if you compress the suspension on one side, it will try and compress the suspension on the other side with a big spring-loaded torsion bar to aid handling. So you have to fight that if the vehicle is not entirely off the ground. So again, one of the first things we're going to do is make sure that the new part matches, because we will potentially destroy the old one when we put it on. And make sure it's the same length and the same, the joints are in the same orientation, which it is. These jacks are quite convenient. They have a nice storage place that you can just poke bits of plastic until you finish the job. Right, so we'll put a bit of lubrication on the back of these threads. One down the back there. This is the joint that's really bad. This is the one I picked up when I took it for MOT. So the joint down there has, depending on which direction you stress it, it's got substantial play in this bottom ball joint here, and yeah, basically not allowed to play in suspension joints in the UK. The annual test is very strict. I am a vigorous supporter of the annual test, because it means that once a year everyone's brakes work and everyone's lights work and the car isn't too rusty. There are people that try and cheat the MOT, but frankly they take more and more actions to make it harder. The DVLA, so it's the DVSA rather, are introducing a thing where you have to take a photograph of the car on the ramp at the end of this year, so to prove that it's actually been there. And more things like the beam pattern analyzers are going to be linked into to the testing computers. So let's go for primary rattle gun. We may have to go for the abrasive spanner, we shall find out. Obviously these links are scrap, so I wouldn't normally put a pair of mole grips onto the shaft of one of these, but they're junk. That's just spinning. Come on, be nice. Tighten them up a little bit. Oh. Have to use the abrasive spanner on that one. I think we're going to need the abrasive spanner, so we will rotate that so that we might access it with the abrasive spanner. Bend it out a little bit. Seems to be a lot of pre-tension on it. There must be with the steering turned, so we might try and see if we can take the bottom off first, which is this link down here. So if if we can remove the bottom. Can't quite get enough of an angle with impact guns around corners, so we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, but wherever we can, you know, the health and safety says if you can use a mechanical assistance device to avoid manual handling, you should. So who are we to argue? So if we can get the bottom one loose, that'll get rid of the pre-tension that's on the top one, and then I can put the I can use the abrasive spanner on the top one. There are various escalation levels in engineering. We have the ratchet, and which is, as we see here, then we have the assault ratchet, which is the impact gun. We have the persuader, which is the 4-foot-long breaker bar with a reduction, and then you have the other escalation levels, such as the abrasive spanner, and then the final level, which is the gas torch. Because you are, if you're using the gas torch to remove a fastener, you are obliged to shout "can't be tight" if it's liquid. This ratchet's a bit long, but with it being longer it requires less effort. So my next job is here, so I will ask them to wait in the car and give me a few minutes while we change this last one off. I'm going to do the anti-roll bar links and the air cleaner on this, and then do his service, and then spin the Stepwgn round and do the back brakes. Right, we've got the bottom one off so we can get rid of the pre-tension, so that should come out, and then we can get the abrasive spanner on. Put the glasses on, as I don't particularly want to pepper the camera with fallout from the abrasive spanner. The abrasive spanner is fairly, it's a fairly one-way deal, you know, it's kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but that movement in there is the problem. You've got play in and out, and if I can hold it against the camera and you can hear that's the problem, that's the failure. Yeah, this is the Honda engine which they use in the everything. It's the 2-litre VTEC. Right. Is it going to be nice and let me spin it on with a... Nope. Inside. So I have a 17mm spanner with which I can just like a bus grip. What I've done there is bolt the spanner to it. Just jumped out of the... and I shall give the top a bit more oomph. So I've just noticed something around the front here. This device here is designed to monitor the angle of the suspension leg, and it's not going to do that particularly well, because that crank shouldn't be facing forward. It should be a vertical thing up here, so the crank arm is, I think, on the wrong way around. Because as you decelerate and the arm lifts up, this has got xenon discharge headlights, so it will aim up the headlights, but also as you accelerate and the front end lifts, because the headlights are projectors and they're very, very dazzling, they will aim the headlights down. So I will have a look at that later on. I need to do a bit of auto data in Google Foo and see what position that should be in. In the meantime, we're done under this side. And wait for me. Whoops. I always like to start the thread first before putting them on with a rattle gun, if I can. I mean, these are not as bad as the compressed air powered impact guns for cross threading things. You get a lot more feel with these, and you can start the motor so much slower. Once it's on the ground, I can torque the wheel nuts up, pull out the jocks, put them down on the ground. Have a look at the air demunting system. We have the correct filter now, which was, well, I suppose it wasn't too difficult to find. Just fiddly. This intake pipe's not in particularly good condition, and obviously it's after the airflow meter, so it needs to not leak. So I don't want to just aggressively bend it out of the way, so we'll take the far end off so we can rotate it and then get the air cleaner out, because this was nasty. I rinsed it in brake cleaner and blew it out with the airline because the one I got was wrong. This one looks much happier. Do that back up and do that back up. Some nice clean filtration. Just have a quick look at the coolant level and just have a quick poke in the top of the radiator, make sure that should be filled all the way to the top, and then it's got this separate expansion tank here, which you see the level on the side. That's all good. Brake fluid I changed recently, so, and power steering fluids on the maximum. It's all, everything looking good. So that's step one. We move it out the way, sort some either out, and then do the back brakes. So, see you in a bit. Buzz this wheel off. One of the only things I truly despise about the UK is the bloody weather, because it's incapable of making its mind up and doing one thing or the other. It's got to be a rain, burning sunshine, frost, snow, and then in the second hour right. So the Japanese are quite superstitious, so they don't use 13mm fasteners. So the retaining screws on the back of the calipers are 12mm. We'll just loosen the retaining screws that hold the disc on first. These are notorious for sticking, so I have actually had this side off before, so it should need minimal persuading. Just one little quick knock, it should come off. Lovely. The other side, not quite so easy. Often if you have a really good impact bit and you hammer the bit in, the hammering it in both makes sure it's really well seated in the head of the screw, but it also helps break any rust seal that might have formed behind it. So oh, that one's going to be a pain. There we go. Two 12mm headed M8 bolts out the back of the bracket where the slide pins hold the caliper on. Let's get those out of the way. With grey imports like this, they tend to go one of two ways. They're either incredibly rotten or they're in really good condition, and this one so far has been in really good condition. And often if they're in good nick, you don't even need the wind back tool for the calipers. You can just push the caliper piston back in like that. Nice and easy. Sit the caliper out of the way. These are aluminium calipers, they're super light and they're never going to do the pipe any damage, so just sit them out of the way. Yeah. That's in there. It's one of the problems you get with the type of caliper that has a slide on the back. The pads can stick in something chronic. Take a 14mm socket and take the caliper bracket off the back of the knuckle, and then the momentary impact motor. So much torque on that the head decides it's going to stick. These were put together dry, no copper slip, no anti-seize lubricant, so the pad is quite stuck in there. So give it some modest persuasion. Quick. Whip the guides out of there. We'll replace those afterwards. So yeah, these are all, they get rusty in there, which builds up a layer, and then suddenly you can't, the pad sticks in because the edge of the pad rusts up as well at the ends, so that won't, it gets to a point where it won't move. There are some people that say, oh, you always put them together dry, and you really don't. You want some sort of lubricant in there. There are people like Kent make very specific lubricants designed for brake back plates. So they call them brake plate lubricant. It's a form of copper slip, but it's got a higher melting point. Speaking of melting points, I shall do the stereotypical British thing of start consuming the mug of tea. So we'll clean this up later. There's a bit of a ridge on the hub, so give it a bit of a tweak to get over that. There's all this loose crud in there floating around the bottom, so I shall cover my tea and then technical tea cover, and then I shall unleash the forbidden cinnamon. all sorts of carcinogenic goodies in there. So this uses a type of disc that's nicknamed a top hat. So the handbrake is operated by, it uses a separate set of shoes inside the top hat part of the disc. So you've got the normal service brake portion of the disc, and then you've got the top hat. This one doesn't look too bad, but these do sometimes rust around there, and what that does is touch the inside of the disc and make a noise. So we'll see if this one rubs, but I suspect it won't. These seem to be the dominant trade brand. They make pretty much everything. I've fitted, you know, thousands of pads, probably multiple thousands of pads, thousands of discs from this manufacturer, and had next to no problems. Obviously, when I was growing up, one of the expressions for being young was you still had the maker's grease. Because obviously when a manufacturer makes something out of steel, they will put a grease on it, which you can see this layer here, to stop rust, etc. So before that goes anywhere near the friction material, that needs cleaning off. So you have a very strong alcohol based solution, which is literally called brake and clutch cleaner. And it's all sorts of alcohols and stuff that's bad for the environment, but it dissolves brake fluid and it removes oils and things. So it's designed specifically to clean this mank off discs. And I'll give it another clean before I actually put it together, because I might end up with some of the anti-seize compound on it. So these have a adjusting mechanism on them. It's the same as the later cords and things. So down in here there is a adjusting ring, which is, if I can see it, this that there's a little toothed ring in there right in the centre of that hole. That holds a screw thread which advances out the shoes at the bottom. Then when you pull the handbrake on, it acts on a lever which uses this intermediate link here to push the top half of the brake shoes out. So we adjust the free play out at the bottom, and the easiest way to do this is to put the drum part on and then feel it. So positioning of the disc doesn't matter for what we're doing now. We're just going to put it on. So yeah, we are getting that bit of contact at the back, so we will take the what's normally the abrasive spanner, but on this occasion we have a rotary wire brush on it, and we'll just take the crud off there. And then hopefully now, when we put the disc on, we won't end up with the same problem. We should be able to put the disc on and it be beautifully quiet like that. So now what we can do is take another tool and advance out the lower part of the brake shoes with the adjuster down there. You're guaranteed to take it in the wrong direction first. And wouldn't you look at that, I took it in the wrong direction first. So you rotate that little knurled outer. It has a spring against it to stop it adjusting itself. Oh, that's not far off. You should hear, when you put them on new, you should hear just a little bit of contact. So not like major rubbing, but just a little bit of contact. So I'll just confirm this should be over adjusted now. No, it's not far off. Right, that's now over adjusted, so that confirms that we were there. So I'll back it off a little bit. Just back it off just a tiny bit more. That's pretty good. So now we want to be setting the position of it, so make sure that the tapered holes line up. And then put a little dab of the anti-seize compound on the retaining screws that hold the disc on. Only needs to be a tiny little bit, there's enough for both of them there. So we nip those up. They don't need to be super tight. All they do is, while the wheel is off, they hold the disc in position. Once the wheel is on, then obviously the wheel nuts clamping together deal with it. So there's always the point made where you should put a dial gauge on. The slide pins are quite well greased on this, so we don't need to worry about those. I added some more grease to the other side, but there's plenty on this side. And we shall take the glasses and the normal rotary friction spanner, and we're going to clean up these. Put a little bit of copper slip inside. Again, this is specifically high melting point copper slip that is designed specifically for brakes. I must keep making that point, because you get people that say you shouldn't put copper slip on, but actually they're simply wrong. Argument along the lines of you end up with a big ball of muck, etc. It's like, yeah, you do end up with a big ball of greasy muck. However, the brake pads move, which means the brakes are able to work properly all the way to the bottom of the of their life. So with a bit of copper slip, and then put the spring jobs back in. Then we can put this back on the. We can put the caliper bracket back on the knuckle. It's two M10 fine thread 14mm headed nuts, bolts even. Well, they don't have shanks on, so I suppose technically they're screws, if you want to be really pedantic. That is the difference between a screw and a bolt. So yeah, these would technically be machine screws, but you know, everyone knew what I meant. Something I touched on earlier on, you would obviously, if you read the instructions that come with the brake discs, they almost always show you to run a dial test indicator against the surface of the disc to look for run out, but to be honest, no one does it. I mean, you might, if you were at a very prestigious garage and a film crew was there, then they might do it. But in reality, all you need to do, if you can find a gap like this one here, and you look closely in at that gap, and you rotate the disc, you can see if there's any run out. I mean, there's a little bit of noise where the back plate is touching as it turns, but it's within tolerance. But the actual, there is effectively no run out. You can, if you haven't got a dial gauge, you can take a blade and hold it very, very close, and if it consistently doesn't touch, then you don't have a problem. Realistically, even if it ran out by a millimetre on a brake like this, you wouldn't feel it anyway. It would make absolutely no difference to the performance of the brakes whatsoever. As with so many things, it's there because in a perfect world, but in reality, machining now of the hubs and the discs is so consistent, and the quality control leaving the factories is so consistent. These are not Chinese surprise parts. These are all major manufacturer guaranteed parts from the same supplier. They're you have traceability over the supplier, etc. So the likelihood of there being run out these days is nothing. If you get a bit of crap stuck under the hub, then yeah, that's a possibility. But check the hub when you fit the disc on. You should check the hub. I mean, I look at it, I have a feel over it, but I might not necessarily have said specifically I am checking the hub at this moment. But there we are. A tiny little bit on each ear, just so that as much as anything, it keeps the water off the surface of the metal of the pad, because the longer you keep the water out, the longer it'll be until it rusts, and the longer you'll get out of the whole thing. I mean, you should occasionally do a brake service where you take the brake pads out and you clean any rust off, and you proactively make sure they all work alright and everything's free. So there we are, the two pads sit in quite nicely, and we can sit the caliper back over. Just push the slide pins back in a little bit. Sometimes they supply new fasteners with the brake pads. I don't know if they have in this case, but the ones that are on it are not rusty and the heads are alright. No, they haven't supplied any this time. Again, it's not worth me showing both sides because it's pretty much a repeat of this. There we are, so that's obviously you can hear the pads touching the disc. That's all ready to go. You tend to get a bit of dissimilar metals action between the steel of the hub and the inside of the wheel. And if you look here, where there's that brown sort of lip there, that's where it's been contacting the wheel and it's corroded. So the wheels stick quite badly. So what we're going to do is put a little bit of the copper slip on, because again, if you remove the oxygen and the water element, then you don't get the dissimilar metals action. So the science is basically that it becomes a bit of a cell. You end up with two different metals, and then when you wet it, it creates a very small electrical charge which starts to make the metals deteriorate. So that's all we need there. Then we can slip the wheel back on. So I'll just jump in, because this is quite a nice thing. It's got, you know, a lot of equipment. Someone's done quite a good job of putting the fog light conversion on for the British market. They've popped a switch in there and they've swapped one of the reversing lights, so it has a red bulb in it, which is quite a neat idea. They've changed the coding so that when the display is on the dashboard, it reads in miles per hour rather than kilometers per hour. So that's quite neat. Yeah, a lot of kit in one of these, and the handbrake is a third foot pedal, a bit like the Mercedes ones, but you push it once to put it on and then click it again to take it off. So that's a nice bit of movement. It's not going down to the floor. It's all quite nice. Lots of things are in Japanese. It's a combination of Japanese and English, so Jinglish. But anyway, so job done.